On this episode of Key Talks, join us as we hear from Dr. Wanda Polzin Holman, CEO of Little Warriors. Little Warriors is an organization focused on the awareness and treatment of child sexual abuse, and known for their trauma-informed treatment facility, the Be Brave Ranch here in Alberta. Stay tuned. It's time for Key Talks. Welcome back, our amazing Key Talkers, to Key Talks podcast, a project of Key Creative. My name is Deanna, and I am the Communications Director of Key Creative. As usual, across the table from me is Paula, our Chief Operations Officer, and Mike, our Technical Director, the one who set up all these microphones, all these cords, and there's like 3 other monitors behind him, making sure everything sounds great for the day it lands in your Spotify playlist and or YouTube and or Apple Podcasts. And of course, our website, keycreative.com, where you can fill out an intake form. We are, if you don't know us yet, we are a pediatric rehab med practice in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Our tagline is success coaching for all abilities. And what does all abilities mean? For example, there's no diagnosis or referral that you need to get started to work with us. And we work with all sorts of disabilities, serious illnesses, traumatic life experiences, if I can be blunt there. And just like we're very neurodiversity affirming. Just to speak for past episodes, like even our colleagues in previous episodes for OCD, ADHD, just a place where we can discuss that and talk about that and normalize that within not just children and teens, but adults for a whole lifetime, right?
Yeah, and I think finding a place where there's acceptance and celebration for everyone's differences and who they are. Yeah,
absolutely. Now, we are very, very excited for our guest today.
I even prepared notes today, and I am not someone who prepares notes, but only because I really respect this person very much. So, yeah.
Not that you don't respect all our guests.
Oh, shoot.
Perhaps the word admire.
Mike, thank you. Yes.
We admire this guest very fondly. We have born witness to her work, her clinical practice. I believe it is over 25 years of practice, Paula.
Yeah, sorry.
We have toured their facilities. Everything will speak for her. She will literally come here and speak for herself.
Yes, yeah. So Dr. Wanda Polzin Holman is from the Little Warriors Be Brave Ranch. She has a doctorate of education in counseling psychology, a master's degree in counseling psychology, is a registered clinical social worker. Additionally, she has over, like you said, Deanna, 25 years of counseling and clinical experience working with children, youth, and families across various domains, including health, mental health, and addictions, children, and family services. And she has 8 years specifically working with the Little Warriors as their clinical director. So we have her here today to talk with us. So without further waiting, let's welcome Wanda.
Welcome,
Wanda. Thank you for bearing with us back there.
We're like, go hide in the back there for, a minute or two. It's like, no.
No, sorry. It was a little longer than
oh my
that.
gosh, I love your nails.
I know. I was actually noticing that too. They're very pretty.
Sparkly.
They're sparkly. So I also want to congratulate you, and I did a little bit earlier, but also just here on the podcast to congratulate you as you are now the incoming, effective immediately, Chief Executive Officer of the Little Warriors and Be Brave Ranch. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Round of applause. Yeah.
Some clapping in there.
Some clapping. So
Well, I was like, I wasn't quick enough, but there is a sound effects one where I could put the clapping in, but
well,
but
I
normally
like
I have
that.
that set up for extra sound
Okay,
filters.
I like the sound effects. That's fun. So maybe I can, before we jump into Little Warriors and Be Brave Ranch, I thought that I would just share how I know you.
Sure, sounds great.
And how I know Little Warriors. So Key Creative has actually been connected to Little Warriors for quite some time. And through their Prevent It program, which we'll talk about, so I'm not going to dive into that too much, but they have a Prevent It program workshop where they educated our team on child sexual abuse. And we have done that a couple times. So the first time we did it was in 2010, I think. We might have to fact check that. But the second time I did fact check, and it was in 2023, was the last time that our team did the Prevent It workshop. So we really believe in the education and understanding of what's going on for our children and how we can best support them, especially those who have survived child sexual abuse. So thank you for that. So I've really admired Little Warriors and Be Brave Ranch. Thank you for that and respect you. And we've also been able to support one of your incredible luncheons that you guys hold every year, which we'll give you an opportunity to speak about as well, which they fundraise and bring together the community to know a little bit more about their programs and what they're doing. And so we've been involved in that too. So now kind of fast forward now to 2022, I had made the decision that I was hoping to become a clinical social worker, an official registered clinical social worker. And I was going through supervisors who I wanted to reach out to. And I saw Wanda's name. And I have to say, my heart did a little bit of a jump. And I thought, oh my gosh, Wanda from Little Warriors could possibly be my clinical supervisor. And then I thought, she's a clinical social worker. And I was super excited. And I reached out to Wanda, and she had agreed to take me on as her student. So for the past, I guess it's been just over 2 years or so, Wanda has been supervising my clinical practice. So thank you for that. I really appreciate it, and I have learned so much from you. And then with that, we've also, as a team, done tours of Little Warriors and Be Brave Ranch. So maybe we could kick it off with the question of, what is Little Warriors and Be Brave Ranch? And maybe we can start with Little Warriors.
Sure. So Little Warriors, we are a not-for-profit organization. We serve children and families from all across Canada. We have had children come from different places in the United States, in Europe, Australia as well. But primarily, we are Canadian-based. We have a specialized treatment center called the Be Brave Ranch. And the Be Brave Ranch operates, it's an episodic treatment center. So children come and are put together in cohorts, basically to establish friendships and people that they feel close with, so that they can come and return for episodes of care. So we have a children's program at the Be Brave Ranch, and we have a teen program. So the children's program is for 8 to 12-year-olds, and the teen program is for 12 to 18-year-olds, and we also have a family program.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. It's incredible. So from what I've also learned about the Be Brave Ranches, there's nothing like it here in Canada. And so it really is an incredible place, and that Alberta's been able to create and establish this place for our children and their families to heal is really quite incredible. So the Be Brave Ranch and Little Warriors, it was founded, was it 2007? 2005. I think it was 2005 by Glory.
So Glory Meldrum is our founder.
Yeah.
And Little Warriors, we have been in operation. Yes, you're right.
Yeah.
You're correct with the dates.
That's my notes.
Nice.
Check.
We started with the Prevent It program.
Okay, so
and
that was your first program.
That's right.
Okay.
That's right. And then since that time, we've had different iterations of the Prevent It program. So
Okay.
we continually update the Prevent It program with new information. We work in collaboration with the University of Alberta.
Okay.
And more recently, we've worked with some Indigenous communities across Canada to create an Indigenous version. So into the future, we're looking at having a French version created,
Oh,
which we're
wow.
working on, and hopefully a Spanish version as well.
Amazing. So tell us about the Prevent It program.
Sure. So the Prevent It program is a program which helps prevent child sexual abuse. So it's a free program. It's been designed to support caregivers, anyone really who works with children or teens. It is a program that can be taken online for, it takes about 90 minutes online, but it can also have it in person. I definitely would recommend the in-person program. We have various volunteers who've been trained to teach the Prevent It program, and in person it's about 3 hours long. And so the program is really designed to support people's understanding of the myths around child sexual abuse, to bring awareness, but also to help establish some go forward in terms of understanding what to look for, how to address things in the workplace. So we cover a lot of topics.
So could we maybe talk about that a little bit, like some of the things for people to be aware of with child sexual abuse? Like what are some of the signs that people could be aware of?
Yeah, I mean, some of the key statistics is that 1 in 4 girls, 1 in 6 boys before the age of 18 have experienced some act of sexual abuse. And of course, that can vary dramatically. In terms of the myths that we talk about in the Prevent It program, is oftentimes people think that, you know, it's strangers that are committing these things, or strangers that are offenders. What we know in research is that's just simply not true. It's 90% of offenders are actually people that are very close to the child, and often they have a grooming process that starts with the parents or caregivers, and it can be a lengthy process. I think there's also a large myth around sort of who or what is an offender. Oftentimes, I think we have a myth or a stereotype in mind about who that person is, but in reality, it can be males, it can be females, it can be other children. And so there's a lot to understand, and to be able to recognize some signs relative to things like grooming or things going on online is really important.
So with the grooming, what could that look like? When you say like being aware of the signs, like what are we looking for with the grooming, for example? Like, or how could a child even be aware that maybe they're being groomed, for example?
Yeah, I think it's more difficult depending on the age of the child, but I think it's more difficult for a child to understand. And in fact, it becomes somewhat confusing sometimes. Because I think what happens unintentionally is that grooming actually often starts with the parent or caregiver.
Okay.
So an offender will do things sort of out in the open with a child that no one sort of questions. So, you know, for example, having a child sit on their lap and or giving hugs or treating the child in a special way. And parents might see that, but not necessarily think anything of it. And it's not that we want to be thinking, you know, terrible things about people in our lives, but to certainly be aware of those things.
And I think it's, I mean, now with the statistics that we're learning about child sexual abuse, I think having that awareness and, you know, that eye is important. And not even that, but just the conversations. I know for me, with my children, just having those age appropriate conversations has been really important, and not to be distrusting of people, but to just be aware that a lot of times it does happen in our families
Right.
and with our relatives. And so how does that awareness serve us without, putting up these blockers of distrust
Yeah.
within our family? So it's definitely, bless you, would be a challenging and difficult thing when it
Think
comes back to the family home.
totally. I think you're bringing up a good point in terms of people often wonder, how do we teach our children this? And children should be taught at a very early age to
Mm.
pay attention to
Mm-hmm.
sort of that feeling inside of
Mm-hmm.
them. The other
Mm-hmm.
piece is to
Mm.
parents and caregivers can really support that sense of like body autonomy. So,
Mm.
if children are not wanting to, give grandma or grandpa a
Yeah.
hug or something, not to say,
Yeah.
oh no, you should go do that, is
Mm-hmm.
to give them alternatives like,
Yes.
oh, you could give them a high five or just
Yeah.
give them a wave versus sort
Yeah.
of forcing them
Yeah.
or creating a distrust of internally how they're feeling. So I think
Yeah.
that's important. The other piece in terms of what caregivers can do is really have clear conversations about body parts at a
Yeah.
very early age and
Yeah.
giving those body parts proper names,
Yeah.
so that children can talk about those things and
Yeah.
it's not sort of shame based.
Exactly. And you got to be a little careful with this. This is kind of on a more humorous side, but with my children, we're very much about penis and vagina and the different and the private parts that we have, but being like, this is your penis, this is your
Right.
vagina. So my children are very vocal about these parts, not only in our home, but with our family and in the community. So you'll often hear them, yelling out those words. Now that's where, it's starting to create boundaries like
Sure.
when we should be running around being like penis, penis, penis. But I also feel good in knowing that they know their body parts. And I will say in my home, we are very much have these conversations about, this is your body. Only you should be touching
Right.
your penis, or only you should be touching your vagina. And even if you, and then for example, even if you like someone and they ask you to do that, that's not okay.
Right.
Right. And like just sort of teaching these subtle things. Like the other thing that's been big for me is like that stranger, they say stranger danger. And I'm like, be aware of strangers, but also just be aware of everyone.
Right.
Right. Like
That's
if
right.
you're ever questioning anything, like you come to mama and papa, right? Or to mom and dad and ask those things. So yeah, I'm big in our home on that education around body parts and sexual abuse, that it does happen. And again, there's age appropriate ways of doing that.
Yeah, and the piece, just to add to what you're saying, Paula, which I think is really important, is giving proper names for children to communicate those things. Because
Mm-hmm.
if they are coming to a safe person and saying someone has touched them in an inappropriate way, usually we talk about it in terms of like, where your bathing suit is or your
Mm-hmm.
private areas,
Mm-hmm.
right? But also giving them the proper names so that
Mm-hmm.
we had a child once, a very young child, who came to our treatment center, who in their report talked about their vagina as a cookie. And so for whatever reason, the caregivers had called it that. And so when they were talking and getting information from this little girl, she was talking about grandpa touched my cookie. So the problem with that is that it confuses things a lot in the reporting instead of being clear about, grandpa touched my private area.
Mm-hmm. And I also feel like it makes it seem like it's a playful thing rather than a more like, as you're saying that and we're like giving it character names, it kind of takes away from the seriousness of it. And
Well, kind of like what I was hearing when you were speaking about the idea of what we can do to like watch out and whatnot. Like I think the whole conversation about consent is such an important thing, and I think that's been like the biggest strive that has been made in
yeah,
perhaps like the
point.
last 10 years, because making sure like the consent
Consent.
of the, but on two sides of what I've been hearing here is like, okay, so what is something that an abuser might use? Well, it's normalization of things, of their behavior, so that basically in plain sight they can hide in plain sight. They can like over sexualize and
Exactly.
they can engage in that. But then on the other side of it, one of the things that we can do to prevent this is the normalization of proper communication about it, so that there's clear communication, that we're not othering things like our private parts, so that it can be either done in a playful manner, or it can be something where it's just not thought about in the level of body autonomy that we do need to do to understand that this is our body, this is what we have consent about. So yeah, so like that, it's kind of you use the very thing that an abuser might use against them in normalizing it in the proper way,
Yeah.
and that. And so it's
Nicely said,
yeah.
Mike. Yeah.
I love what you're saying, Mike, around consent. And Paula, you even saying, when we're talking with our children, it's important for them to know, even with mom and dad, that their body is their own.
Yes.
And so, no one is, touching you in those places. Sometimes what happens is that, children are confused about that. And even when you're taking a child to, the doctor, is to be able to say to them, like, they need to ask consent, and to be able to give them that languaging is super important. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's that idea of kind of that whole autonomy in that you're a human being, that there's not a one set of rules for one person and versus another, and like stuff like that. I think back to like my previous life in education and how important that was in terms of creating engaged learners, where you don't kind of try to create these power dynamics. That it's become so important about making sure that we respect and understand these things, that you don't, it's one set of rules for all, not for me. They're like, it's because when you create different power structures, that's where someone can abuse a power structure.
And that's what I was just thinking about, was thank you for sharing that power dynamic, right? And so how are we empowering our children to feel like they have a voice to say to the doctor, actually, I don't feel comfortable with that, and maybe I do need my mom, or I want my mom here before you do that, right? And usually in most of those situations, the parent needs to be there, but I'm just thinking about empowering our children to have their voice, and it's okay for them to stick up for themselves or say if they don't feel comfortable. And again, that's been a big thing in our home, just with Lena and Braulio and them exploring different things and being like, that's your body, that's his body. You can't just be touching or grabbing or whatever. You have to ask. And the same thing should be happening on the playground or at school or at a community. Like, if there's things like that happening, there needs to be consent, right?
And,
it's such an important piece.
I even think like the idea of avoiding generalizing too, because like, I remember the thing you do, we were having a conversation before this about like the polka dot door and stuff like that. But I remember like block parents and like the idea of just safe people.
Yeah.
Well, if we generalize it as that, we kind of rob people of the ability to make those judgments and give consent. Consent is not something that's just ongoing. It is something that we engage in actively to make sure that we're self-advocating for what our needs are in a situation to feel safe. And so like making sure that we do this and raise children so that they have that ability to do that is really important.
So I'm just going to loop it back a little bit, actually, if it's okay. What got you connected to Little Warriors?
Yeah, I mean, I think throughout all my career, I have always known, even as a child, that I always wanted to work with children and families. So early in my career, I worked in children's mental health and worked for a long time in treatment centers, and also then went on to addictions and mental health and worked provincially in a role there, and then also worked with parents and caregivers and foster families and kinship providers to do a lot of attachment and trauma work, and just really love the area of trauma. I guess that might seem odd, but what I love about it is when people are given the right resources, when families are given, the right tools and supports, you can really see the resilience for children and families. And I just love doing that work. I love supporting people to heal and be well. And so the Be Brave Ranch was sort of a natural progression. The Be Brave Ranch has been around 10 years. We just celebrated our 10-year anniversary, and I've almost been there 8 years now. And we've had a lot of changes and learning and growth. And I love and appreciate and actually feel really honored to be able to step into the lives of families when they open up in that way to receive supports, and to be a part of that is truly amazing.
Yeah, and as you're saying that, for people to be willing to come
Yeah.
to the treatment center and share that vulnerability, that trauma in their lives is such a huge thing, right? Most people, I think, and you might know the stat, but from what I've heard and read, like, a lot of people don't disclose sexual abuse, right? A lot of people keep it hidden for a long time, and usually it comes out much later in life. Can you speak to that a
That's
little
right.
bit?
The latest stat that I came across is that, particularly for women, a lot of times they don't speak about their abuse until they're in their 50s. What I find really interesting at Little Warriors in the Be Brave Ranch is that we have families who will refer their child or teen to our program and open up and really want to have supports for them. But I can't tell you the number of times that that's happened. And when we begin to work with the caregivers, they then, for the very first time in their lives, disclose their own abuse. So yes, I think there's, historically been a lot of shame and guilt and a lot of sort of holding that in rather than really feeling that they can talk about.
And I think that's the shame and guilt that comes from the sexual abuse, that people keep it in, and then it destroys them inside, right? And
Yeah.
Be Brave Ranch is giving them that opportunity to heal. So we've seen the Be Brave Ranch. We've had a tour of it. Deanna and I know we're there, and it is an incredible facility. So I know you spoke a little bit about it in our first question, but can you tell us a little bit more about how it's structured, the different programs? I'm thinking of that incredible art space, for example, which is so beautiful.
I'm thinking of like
Which one are you
therapy
thinking
dogs,
of?
the
therapy
blanket
rugby,
room.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, I feel very fortunate. We have a lot of community support. So it allows us to be able to really focus on building a trauma treatment center that's very much child and family centered. We have about 11 different modalities of treatment at Little Warriors. So like you said, we have therapy dogs. We right now have Rugby and Eddie, and they come to us through Dogs with Wings. They are our co-therapists, and they are just amazing additions to our treatment team. We have art therapy, we have music therapy, we have equine assisted therapy. Our therapists are all, specialized in trauma treatment and participate in individual therapy, group therapy, family therapy. We have a variety of different modalities. So some of our children and teens and families will be involved with trauma treatments such as somatic therapies or EMDR, eye movement desensitization, reprocessing. So the intention from our perspective is that, as individuals, we all sort of respond in different ways to different modalities of treatment. And so we never force the children or families to participate. In fact, we're 100% voluntary. So we just want to offer as many different ways to support people to feel safe, to begin to unpack some of those layers of trauma. And yes, the Be Brave Ranch is really a special place. Fortunately, we have a lot of people that come together as a community, and And that's really felt by the children
Mhm.
and teens. When they come, they do get to receive their own blanket and they take
Yes, I
that
was thinking of
home.
the
Yeah,
blankets, and they're knit. Are they knit blankets or
like
are they quilted?
patchwork,
Quilted, yeah,
patchwork
patchwork.
quilts.
Okay,
And it's
yeah.
really symbolic. Interestingly, we use that symbolically even at
Mm.
our graduation ceremonies to
Yeah,
demonstrate that really it's about pulling all sorts of different pieces together to make
yeah.
really, a lovely blanket. But it's
Mm-hmm.
sort of like in trauma treatment, we can't sort of pick something out or in our lives take something away. It's all
Mm-hmm.
sort of built into that pattern. And so
Mm.
we,
Beautiful.
yeah, we really believe in nurturing and,
Mm-hmm.
but also having fun at the
Yeah.
treatment center.
And I noticed that sort of the fun part, I think, is such an important element in the therapeutic process, and building that rapport and helping people feel comfortable. And I know when I came to the Be Brave Ranch, that essence of like playfulness and fun and color, vibrancy and energy is definitely felt there. And I really appreciate just the intentionality that you guys have with every space that you have, and that every space kind of connects to another space, even though they're one in themselves. They also connect very well uh, together, and so that is very much felt when you're at the ranch for sure. It's a beautiful, beautiful space, and very grateful that the community has come together to help support this place for our children and their families.
Yeah,
It's
we really
really
wouldn't
wonderful.
be able to do it without
Yeah.
community in so many ways. I mean,
Hmm.
on our website, we have, lists of sort of our top needed items.
Hmm.
We have 120 acres. And so
Yes.
there's many buildings.
Hmm.
We have a children's program, a teen program, a
Hmm.
family program out there. And so, we go through a lot of um, dish detergent and
Yes.
we go
Yeah.
through a lot
Right.
of like feminine, hygiene
Yeah.
products and
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
that. So our goal really at the ranch, and really at Little Warriors, is to make sure that if we can get things donated or if the community has these things in some way, that we can use them, as
Hmm.
donations rather
Hmm.
than, as operating costs.
Amazing. So the other thing I just wanted to touch on a little bit was the trauma. And as you're speaking of that, because me too, I have that passion for trauma and the healing and bringing people together and creating hope and resilience within themselves and within their families. And I think one thing we know for sure is that trauma sort of finds itself and rests itself in our bodies. And it's not what happened to us, it's what's happened inside of us. And so when you're talking about like the somatic experiencing or the EMDR, those are end up being really body focused
Right.
therapies, right? And I think at the heart of trauma therapy is working with the body first, at least in some modalities. Could you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, I think it's a really important concept and discussion, Paula. Our treatment program is actually set up in a way that we have 4 rounds of therapy. So our first
Mhm.
round of therapy is really doing a lot of psychoeducation around these sorts of things. A lot of
Mhm.
children, a lot of families are really disconnected from their bodies. But as we know, you know, as Vander Koch and Bruce Perry and others have talked
Mhm.
about from the perspective of trauma, is that it does get stored in our bodies,
Mhm.
right? And so
Mhm.
if we even think about it neurodevelopmentally, our program is sort of operates around that. So round 1 of therapy, we do a lot of psychoeducation. We do a lot of grounding and teaching
Mhm.
the children, but also the caregivers,
Mhm. Can
what's
I
going
just
on.
stop you that what
Yeah.
can we tell people what we mean by grounding?
Sure. So,
Yeah.
what we mean is really to be able to be present,
Yeah.
to be emotionally regulated, and to
Mhm.
have some strategies to be able to calm when you're feeling sort of what we are activated or
Mhm.
stressed or triggered. And so,
Mhm.
What we do in round one is we really, really focus heavily on that before we dive into a lot of the trauma treatment. And the reason for that is because we want to make sure that that foundation is laid
Yes.
before we sort of open up
Yeah.
any trauma sort of themes or whatnot, so that the child or teen and their family is able to contain that stuff, right? So if we think about it from a neurodevelopmental perspective, some people talk about like the reptilian brain and really calming all of those parts of the brain, the breathing, you know, heart rate, calming and making sure that, you know, sleep is regulated and digestion is regulated, because when we have had traumatic experiences, oftentimes sort of those automatic parts of ourselves are dysregulated too.
Yes, amazing. It's creating that safe space where they feel connected, where they feel regulated. I'm thinking of the window of tolerance. Like, how can we get within that window of tolerance as best we can, or at least feel a sense of safety? Because I think, like, we know that, like you said, a lot of times trauma, when you have been traumatized, you're sort of living in that fight, flight, or fright response, right?
Right.
And outside of that window of tolerance. So how are we grounding and creating that sense of safety so that people can go on this journey of healing? I think that's what I also love about your program, is that it honors that healing is a process, right? And that it takes time, and that although the impact of the trauma may never go away, the hope and the healing and the resilience gets bigger. And I think doing that over time is so important, and as well as connecting the people to these other families and people who are going through that same journey with them is
Right.
really incredible as well. So
Yeah, we've had
amazing.
a lot of feedback, and
Yeah.
our program is research. So, as I mentioned earlier, we look at outcome measures, but we also look and respond to feedback from children and families. And so, what you're saying about sort of episodes of care and making sure that there's a longer sort of intervention and support. So we try our best to have wraparound supports for that child for over a year.
Oh, wow. So after they're done the program, even at the ranch, there's still a
There's
year
still
of
connection through like
Yeah.
our Be Brave Bridge program is an online program, and we support caregivers as well as children. We also have check-ins, and a lot of children. We have graduates who continue to reach out to us literally years later. We've
Amazing.
had you know, someone who's 18, 19, 20 years old now who reached back out to us just to let us know how they're doing. So
Oh, that's
I
amazing.
think we kind of have that sense of connection with the caregivers and with the child or teen, so that they feel that we are almost a part of their larger extended support system.
Yeah, yeah. So what is the age that the age group of people that are able to attend the ranch?
Our children's program,
Yeah,
we start at 8 years old,
Okay.
and that's boys and girls. So 8 to 12 years old in our children's program, and then our teen program is 12 to 18.
Okay. Okay. And maybe this is an opportunity. So what about we know that you said that the families are able to come, and a lot of times you may find out that a parent or a caregiver has actually experienced the sexual abuse as well. What other support may be available to these parents or these adults that are now ready to disclose or heal some of those trauma wounds?
Yeah, currently we do not have an adult program. Actually, Little Warriors is working with some of our donors because there is sort of this question about, is there programming that's required that is not currently out there? And of course, there's a lot of really good trauma programs. There's a lot of good work that's done by, you know, sexual assault centers and whatnot for adults. But currently, we're doing a scoping review, a very large research project to determine and have an environmental scan to determine, you know, next steps. Presently, what we do is when adults come to us is we refer out. If they're parents of our children or teens, what we do is that we'll support them with our Be Brave Bridge caregiver
Yes.
program.
Yes.
So they'll basically learn a lot about themselves, but about their child as well, so that they can therapeutically continue the work that's being done at the treatment center. And in doing that, I think there's a lot of healing that happens for them as well. But we also have an intensive family program. So we have children and their families come out for extended weekends, so like a Thursday through Sunday, and they really intensively work on a weekend with our therapists and do a lot of family work together. So there's a few different options.
Yeah. So we've brought up that Be Brave intensive online programs a few times, and so it's online. It's an online learning platform, it sounds like.
That's
And is it
right.
accessible to anyone, or how do you get access to the programs?
You can just get access through our website, which is littlewarriors.ca.
Yeah.
And it's the Be Brave Bridge program. It's free. We have an online coach. And so families can sign up on their own. It's
Okay.
really sort of, it's a lot of psychoeducation.
Yeah.
So it reviews a variety of different modules. I think we have about 18 different modules right now, which might seem like a little bit much, but they're really sort of snapshots in areas such as, you know, how to talk to your child about consent, you know, what are boundaries, how to address, you know, online safety with your child. So we have sort of these small talk sessions, and they're given psychoeducation, and then they're also given some resources and some sort of ways to internally self-reflect as a parent. And if they want to reach out to a coach online, they can do that as well.
Awesome. So there's the one for the caregivers. Is there also, was there one, and then for families? And then is there like an individual?
There's an adolescent,
Okay, there's the adolescent. Yeah.
and then there's a caregiver or parent program.
Okay.
But and that program actually has also been used by some teachers and some therapists. So they'll have the content. And
I myself have accessed them and used parts for sure. It's
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
yeah, it's all content that can be photocopied and handouts can be given. So we have the caregiver program, then the adolescent program, and then there's a parent-child program. So a child under, you know, 8 to 12-year-olds can take the course basically with their parents. And it covers topics with little videos and things like that around some of the things we've already been talking about as well.
Wow, incredible. That's awesome. I love it. So kind of getting it maybe into a larger conversation or talk about like how do we normalize and create space for victims, survivors, people who have experienced sexual abuse to feel like they can and it's okay for them to come forward and share what's happened to them. Because like we talked about, there's that shame and guilt, but how do we as a community, as society, empower this to happen more and that people aren't waiting till they're 50, but that we're starting these conversations at, I mean, the hope would be that, you know, we're educating enough at that young age that our children that are 7, 8 are saying, hey, mommy, this happened and I don't feel good. But let's say it happens and then we have our 12, 13, 14-year-old, like for them to feel the courage to bring up those conversations. It's such a
I
tough
know.
thing.
And
Like
then you
it's
say, hey, mommy, because
heartbreaking.
it could be a generational
Mhm.
concern, a cultural thing
Mhm.
where they wait until 50 because maybe those adults have
Mhm.
gone upstairs. So they're
Mhm.
not there to enforce that, you know, I'd say unconscious family pattern of
Yes.
non-disclosure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even as you're saying that, it's the other part that comes in is like this people think, well, this is going to break my family. Like this is going to ruin my relationship with this person, or it's going to ruin the relationship between my mom and dad, or my dad and their uncle, or my mom and their sister, or whatever it is. Right. And so there's so many reasons why people keep it quiet in one way. Right. But we know the detrimental impact that there is of keeping it quiet on the person. and their health and their mental health. Deanna, you were talking about, how people end up, like some of the repercussions of that, like it makes it hard for us to be at our best when we hold all this shame and guilt. So I mean, it's sort of this bigger
Like
conversation.
imagine there's like there's an altercation at work, and you're like, and you don't have the wherewithal to ask yourself how did so and so react that way. Well, like, it could come from actually these different things that happened when they were an adolescent, but it gets normalized or slipped under the rug, and then there they are at 29 wondering like, why can't I hold down a job? Why is it so hard for me to have like a boss say something like that to me? All those different kinds of things. It's really
And just that level of intergenerational trauma that happens. And I know there's been a lot of talk, obviously, around this area from like childhood and residential school survivors as well, right? Is that there has been a history of sexual abuse and how much shame and sort of that holding it in and not having the ability to talk about it within families. You're also bringing up a really important point is child sexual abuse is actually one of the 10 ACEs, the original adverse childhood experiences. And so we know that there's this correlation between ACEs, and the higher your ACE score, the higher the possibility for other things that including mental health, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress, but also other things like homelessness and family dysfunction, addictions. And so if we aren't talking about this, it's just going to continue to perpetuate the problem and support sort of those intergenerational secrets.
And what comes to my mind is that it's not about blaming anyone. Like as we're talking about that intergenerational trauma, it's not about blame. Like everything comes from somewhere and usually stemming from a pain, right? And pain and not knowing how to deal with it. So this isn't about pointing fingers or anyone's fault. It's how do we empower enough to feel like I know that me healing can make a shift or a change in the lives of the people who come after me or who are amongst me even, right? And so, yeah.
I think it was Bruce Perry who talks about sort of that whole concept of, instead of what's wrong with you or in those situations. I mean, we never know what's happening for people, and it's more really around what's happened in your life to make you respond in this way, right?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. That's such an important thing, because I think even for children, a lot of times they get labeled as bad kids or, the disruptor or whatever, when really they're hurting, right? Like there's things that have caused their behavior. I know in a lot of presentations I do, behaviors are really just the tip of the iceberg. They're what we see, right? It's communicating, but there's that whole chunk of ice, underwater that this person has experienced things that have made it hard for them to be at their best. And how can we be detectives, to understanding that? So then I'm thinking like, not even just putting all that pressure on the person, like how are we creating space of understanding and awareness around people so that we can feel safe enough to come forward? And I keep thinking of like alleviating fault or blame.
What's coming up in my head right now is kind of this allegory of this as a library. Think about, for generations, we're told to not speak, to stay quiet at the library, and you get shushed for coming out. And now I think of our amazing cutting edge libraries today. It's okay to laugh at your YouTube video in the computer lab, or to giggle and laugh when you're having a read along. That it's not that you're not having to stay quiet at all times, and it becomes a broader community center where you can express yourself. So, I hope that's an okay analogy.
I think that's a great analogy. I think things are changing. I really do. I think over time they're changing. I think about things like, the Me Too movement. That certainly created some change. The unfortunate thing is that I think whenever we think about Me Too, we tend to think about women, adult women, but there is children in the Me Too, and there's males and different people who are involved in that too. But I definitely think it is changing.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So how do people access the ranch?
Yeah, so very easily, just online. Again, it's littlewarriors.ca. They can access the Prevent It program, the Be Brave Bridge program. You can do an immediate application to the treatment center. We've even had teens actually access it themselves. Of course, we have to get their guardians involved. But it's literally like a 5-minute process to do a questionnaire. And then we have therapists follow up to begin a screening once that's completed.
Okay, so it's all through the website. Everything is accessible through the website. And people who are interested in getting to the ranch, there is an online application form. And for those who are underage, a caregiver guardian is required to sign off or approve of the applicants. Okay. And then it sounds like someone gets in touch with you and then you go through the next steps. Okay. So what if I was going to say, what if they don't have a caregiver or guardian that can sign off for them? Like what happens to those children that are
if they're a mature minor?
Yeah.
Well, if they're a mature minor, they can complete the form themselves. If they have caseworkers involved or they're involved somehow in the child welfare, child and family services system, anybody that's involved with them can support them to do the application. Very, very easy.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. So how can listeners support Little Warriors?
Yeah, thank you. I mean, there's so many ways to support. We always need volunteers to do different things. Like I mentioned, we have kind of a wish list online. So if people are doing spring cleaning and they have things that they want to donate, they can do that. We have various drop-off centers. And then we also have some events and various third-party fundraiser events. We have our luncheon coming up in May. This year we have our luncheon in Edmonton and Calgary. We also have some events happening in May and June in the Vancouver area. So come out to our luncheon, come support. It's really a day and a time of hope and people coming together, and our kiddos that are involved in our program really they participate remotely, so they see and hear all the people who are there for them. So those are some ways. We also have a golf tournament. So there's a lot of things coming up, and this year we're going to be trying out a few other fundraisers. So just come to our website, and if there's something that speaks to you, certainly come out and support us. We would love that.
Awesome. Thank you. Our theme for the year at Key Creative is WOOSH, which stands for We Open Opportunities Serving Hope. And so hope is definitely what Little Warriors and the Brave Ranch are doing for so many people. It's incredible. Thank you for that amazing work. It's really, we're in awe of it. One last question, perhaps, and then I'll open it up too, but how do you balance the serious nature of your work with hope, positivity, and celebrating awesome?
Yeah, I love that question. I mean, we at the ranch, at the treatment center, and at Little Warriors, we realize that this is hard work on our staff. We have a refresh week every 5 weeks. So as a team, we get together and we do compassion fatigue work with our staff. But we also try to have a lot of fun. It is hard work, but at the same time, when we know that we're doing something that, has such positive, hopeful outcomes, I think it's easy for us to celebrate that and to really support each other. And I know we really encourage all of our staff and our volunteers and anyone who's involved to do a lot of self-care and, to kind of walk the walk that we're teaching our children, and, that balance of physical, mental, spiritual, emotional well-being. So, our staff really support each other in that. I think it's a great question.
Thank you. Awesome. Mike, Deanna?
No,
They're good.
It's been great.
Amazing.
That's been awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you, Wanda.
Yeah,
It's
thanks
so
for-
great to have you here. We're so
been
grateful. Thank you for sharing about Little Warriors, about the Be Brave Ranch, the Prevent It program. It's free. Organizations, people, this is something that we can access. We've talked a lot about just the importance of the awareness of child sexual abuse. For those who may be struggling themselves, you're not alone. It's not your fault. You're already brave, and I invite you and us to have the courage to support each other in that healing journey. We're all worth it and deserving of love and healing. And to have this amazing organization here in Edmonton and Alberta, we're so lucky for everything that you guys are doing. And really, Wanda, this organization having you as their leader is so incredibly lucky. I am going to say, I think everyone I talk to that knows you or has been in contact with you, you just have this beautiful, kind spirit and energy, and the care in your heart is felt, I know, by me and us. And so thank you. They're lucky, very lucky to have you.
Paula.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you for being here again. And we can whoosh it out.
Let's whoosh it out.
Right.
We'll
What do we do?
So
Yeah.
we haven't explained actually what the whoosh. Yeah. So basically, I always like to call it, it's like a heartbeat all together. But the best way to think of it, if you're trying to figure out what you need to do, is you start off with potatoes, you go to fries, and you bring it back to potatoes.
Are we doing 2 potatoes?
What's that?
2 potatoes
We can do two-handed
Usually you
whoosh.
do 1 potato.
Okay,
Yeah.
maybe this is a potato day.
So we're at our potatoes,
Yes.
Potato.
fries,
Fries.
and then this, and then
Potatoes.
as we do it, we say whoosh.
Love
The
that.
open opportunity serving hope.
Thank you all.
You're welcome.
Sometimes, really bad things happen. It's scary, and I can't escape. I always wished for a hero, and then I found you. The Be Brave Ranch is unlike anywhere on Earth. Full of people who care, who love unconditionally. Here my spark came back. I changed my pain into power. My story isn't just my story. It's the story of boys and girls everywhere. My story is our story. I'm a survivor, a warrior, and now I create change too.
Key Talks is a project of Key Creative. Our co-hosts are Paula Audrey Rivero and Deanna Halls. Our production team is Michael Schwake, Jessa Dupuis, and Deanna Halls. Music by John Rivero. To reach out to us or access services for you or your family, visit keycreative.com. That's QICreative.com and fill out our online intake form. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.